everyone, it's Mrs. Hewitt. We are going to go over literature circles because for the next, I guess we'd call it sort of like a week or so, you guys are reading literature circles. And the nice thing about this is it grooves into a nice little sort of groove as you go through. So I'm going to go through the expectations every day, and if you keep up with it, it's really easy to do. So the first thing you're going to do, and everything is under here, under your literature circles, and every day there's sort of a new sort of idea to be thinking about. So think about that, as well as there are some discussions that are happening on the discussion board. So you can take a look at that throughout. Yeah, and just make yourself a list, cross things off as you go, you'll be fine. So the first thing you do is you're going to be dividing your books into 4. I'm going to go down here. Here you go. As a group in your discussion, you guys can decide it. It's easy. All you do is just figure out how many pages and divide it by 4. And for each chunk, you're going to have expectations. So there's 4 days that we're going to be working on this, and then you have your essay on the 5th day. So this is sort of, if you divide it that way, it makes sense. So here's what you're going to do. You are firstly going to read your section, and as you read, you're going to do what's called a reader's journal. And every day they have a different thing to think about. This day, day 1, your focus is on the narrative voice. So and it goes through and explains that if you forget what that is. As well as under your reader's journal, it gives you some sort of direction in terms of that. So read through that, but here's a sample. It's not a full sample, like yours should be a little bit longer. This is what you're submitting to your portfolio. The first thing, as you read, you're taking notes. Take a look at the rubric. I have noted important details from the text, key quotations, and brief summaries of things I think are important in the left-hand column. So those are things like, this is what happens in the story. Oh, here's an interesting quote. Those type of things. And then make sure you have page numbers. Include questions on the right-hand side, like, wait, is Gatsby a person or a thing? Question. Or making connections to yourself, other texts in the world around you, also on this right-hand side. Analyzing word choices, imagery, symbolism, metaphors, other literary devices on the right-hand side. And most important, or something that people forget to do, is I have drawn conclusions about why the author may have made particular choices. Remember, every word written by an author is there for a reason, and it's intentional why they have it there. And that all goes in the right-hand side as you sort of are making comments on the, the things that happen in the book. You're making comments on them. They're called thinking notes, like concrete, abstract, if you're familiar with that at all. That's what that is. And every day you're going to hand that in just as you read. And you should probably have, like in a chunk, you probably have more than this, but you should aim probably to have 10 to 15 sort of columns as you're going through every day. So that's your reader's journal. That's the first thing you're going to do. The next thing you need to do is your discussions. So if you go up here and read through all this information, it helps give you ideas of how to come up with good questions. Here's the type of questions you're going to have. And there's a link to a Google Doc that I sent to your GoTBDSB, as well as the links are in the discussion section. If you take a look at that, you're going to make comments and questions on your discussions. And if you go down here to the rubric for the discussions, where is it right here? It goes through. For each discussion, prepare 4 discussion questions, and it tells you the types of questions you need to have. And then you need to make sure you respond to at least 4 questions from your classmates. And try and do that in a timely manner because it's a discussion, it's a conversation. That just makes sense. Here's the criteria. Make sure you have specific references to the text. Make sure they're open-ended. And make sure they deal with aspects of the text that are important for developing sort of a deeper understanding. So, focus on important themes of the book. And then also you're getting marks for answers. So make sure to have really good answers and support your classmates as you go through. And you can even respond to their questions or respond to their responses to your response. And you can have like a conversation. That's how a book club works. So click on discussions, and it'll tell you where those links are to those things. So it's a second job you have to do. That shouldn't take very much time at all, especially if you did a good job with your reader's journal. Finally, every day you're creating what's called a synthesis paper. And if you did a good job with your reader's journal, this is like not a big deal at all. You're creating sort of a formal paper or reflection, if you will, 500 words. And synthesis is a fancy word for taking all the information you have and making some connections and sharing the key information. So for example, today we were talking about narrative and sort of narrative voice. So that's what your focus should be on the next on this paper. The other ones focus on different things like characterization and theme, but this one is focusing specifically on narrative voice. So talk about things like word choices that are used and how the narrator, do you trust them? Oh, it's interesting that it's in first person. Why did they choose to do it in first person? Or maybe you have different narrators. So what you're going to do is you're going to make comments about that and make sure 500 words, so it's 2 pages double spaced. Make sure you use MLA. Make sure you use in-text quotations, and make sure to integrate those quotes. And I've been trying to give you guys feedback. If you've been handing your work on time, you've gotten some good feedback to help with that. Make sure you have developed paragraphs. It's not a paragraph essay by any means, but you probably have an intro that's kind of short, and you probably have 2 or 3 paragraphs, and probably a very short conclusion. And then just take the stuff you have in your reader's journal and put it together in an interesting sort of way. Say, hey, I'm really noticing some interesting things happening as they're introducing Gatsby. You know, the narratives describe him interestingly. So make references to those things. And then think about also why the author decided to do things. Like, wait a second, why is so-and-so wearing a green dress? Or sorry, and if we think of Mice and Men, a red dress, what does that represent? Interesting book for another day. But think about those things as you go through. And that's your rubric that goes along with that. And then there's a little reflection you're going to save to your portfolio. I'm going to be popping in and out of your portfolios throughout. I'm going to try and look at your reader's journals as you go throughout and make comments. If it's not done on the day of, I may not make as many comments, but make sure you're doing that. And even if I don't leave a comment, know that I'm looking at them as we go throughout. Yeah, so that's the gist of what you need to do. Every day, it's a lot of work, but if you get into a nice groove, you should be in good shape. So that's the gist of your literature circles. I'll recap one more time. Read the book and do reader's journal at the same time. Don't do it after. You're going to waste time. So do that. Make some discussion questions. Write a synthesis paper of your findings in your reader's journal, and then do your reflection. It's really not a lot of work. This is all leading to a final essay as you go throughout. So think about what themes you see in the book. Think about what ideas you see emerging in the book, because you're going to be coming up with some ideas of what you could write about in your write as your thesis for your essay. So I hope that helps and that offers some clarification. Like I said, go through and read the instructions. I'm noticing people are doing fairly well, but people are missing things. As you read through things, what I would do is have a notebook and take notes as you go through, or say, okay, here's my notes from each rubric, or print out the rubric and check things off as you go through, right? Or go through the different numbers and give some check marks just as you go through, but use this as a checklist. Did I do this? Did I do that? Did I do that? And that will help you do really well with this. Yeah, and just work for the next couple days and try and get ahead of that. I hope you enjoy your books. They're all really great. And I've been rambling the last minute or so, so I'm going to try and finish this off. Yeah, how do I do that?